we are now recording. I will show you, of course, how to turn on recordings later, but today is all about the virtual classroom, and likely the very first thing you need to be able to do with the virtual classroom is access the virtual classroom. So let's look at how we're going to do that. For the vast majority of people, and ooh, it was good timing, just someone saying send food. I think you might have to get your own, but for most of you, you're going to be actually going into the virtual classroom through some sort of Blackboard site. You're likely a GATA on maybe one or more sites. Maybe you have your own sandbox site or requested some kind of organization. They should all have the virtual classroom on them. I'm going to zoom in on our site right here. Oops, just too much. You should, by default, have the virtual classroom as a menu item on every new course that is created. That being said, let's say you or someone else accidentally deletes it. Or maybe there was a glitch when your site was created and for some reason the virtual classroom wasn't added. Hopefully that doesn't apply to anyone, but just in case, what you're going to do is you're going to be able to add the virtual classroom to your menu yourself. To do that, you click the plus symbol at the top left of the menu. And by the way, if you ever don't see the plus symbol, just double check that the edit mode is on here over on the far right. As long as edit mode is on, we can click this plus symbol, go down to tool link. The virtual classroom is a tool we can use. Tool link, and under type, we're going to pick Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. That's the official name of the virtual classroom. The formal name, Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. Most of us just refer to it as a virtual classroom because it's more intuitive. You get to call it whatever you want, though. I would recommend something obvious that the students will know. Don't call it Blackboard Collaborate Ultra because they probably won't know what that means. Instead, most people will call it something like virtual classroom. Or if you're going to use it for office hours, maybe call it virtual office hours. Finally, just make sure it's going to be available to users and click submit. It'll show up at the bottom of the menu, and of course you can move it around if you want to somewhere a little more convenient. Now in my case, I already had the virtual classroom as a menu item. Oh, and actually, sorry, one thing I forgot to mention right off the bat is that when I'm recording this session, not only is what I'm sharing on the screen recorded, but the chat gets recorded as well. Not only that, it gets timestamped, which I think is one of the better features of the virtual classroom, because if you were to ask a question in the chat, say 10 minutes from now, you're not gonna have to search through the video going, okay, where did he answer that? No, you'd be able to click that comment and it would jump to that point of the video. So please, feel free to put any questions or concerns you have in the chat. I will be monitoring it throughout and try to respond as best I can. Also, even if you want to use it as kind of a bookmarking tool, some people have done that in the past where they made little notes saying, talking about this, because maybe you're knowing that later on you're going to be very concerned about breakout rooms. Well, you can make a quick note talking about breakout rooms in the chat. That way, when you watch the video later, you could click it and jump to that point in the video rather than searching around. So feel free to make bookmarks. Might be a way to help all of you organize together. And again, please do not hesitate to ask questions. I think since we're such a large group that it will be best to keep the questions mostly to chat for now. At the end, we can all turn on our mics and ask questions, but with such a large group, probably simpler to put chat in or questions in the chat. The recording will be saved to the site it was made in. So in this case, the GATA network site, you should, I believe, be able to access it, but also I think they will be following up with a recording link. I'll show you where the recordings are stored within a site. So as long as you have access to the GATA network site that we're running this from, you can go in and get the recording later. Great question as well. What is recorded on the screen is what is on the main area. So by main area, right now, that is the screen I'm sharing, the site I am showing. You can see my camera in the bottom right. And in fact, if you want to toggle between what is large on the screen, you can click my picture in the bottom right and it'll make that large. And then if you switch and click the picture of the screen I'm sharing, it'll switch back and forth between them. A useful trick if a student ever needs to say read lips, they can make that larger. But the thing that's shared, that is recorded at any given time, is the main thing shared. If I stop sharing my screen, then my webcam would be recorded. My audio is always recorded, but it's the main thing being shared on the screen. In this particular case, this website I'm showing. Unfortunately, you can't do a picture-in-picture. You can't share both. If you use some external program to bring in your webcam, say in the bottom right corner here, then that would get recorded in the video. But there's a few tricks you can use. I mean, you could stop sharing your screen and then it would be showing my webcam, or some other things you can do as well. We'll show that later. Great. So as I was saying, I already actually had the virtual classroom on my menu. Again, hopefully most courses should add that by default. Now I can add it as many times as I want. I can name it different things. Generally, there really wouldn't be a reason for that because when I click them on the menu, they all lead to the same place. So having multiple links to the same page probably doesn't make sense. If you did have a pedagogical reason for that, you could do it though. But it will all lead to the same place. Now, if you're going to be using a virtual classroom in a course, I would encourage you to consider using the classroom tutorial or making it available. This is another thing that should by default be on every single course site that has been created this term. If again, accidentally gets deleted or somehow there was a glitch, it didn't get added, you can add it via the Get Help tab in Blackboard. In my case, I'm going to open it in a new tab. And if you scroll down along the right-hand side in the Get Help tab, you can see there's this thing saying, are you using a virtual classroom? If so, you download this zip file right here, and then you follow the instructions with screenshots that show you how to import it. Hopefully none of you should have to do this. It should just be there on the menu already, but just in case, I wanted to show you. The virtual classroom tutorial is fairly simple. It says what the virtual classroom is. It's got 2 videos, one that's about 3 minutes, one that's about 4 minutes. They show things like how to access recordings if you made them, how to get into the virtual classroom, how to set up your audio and video. It's kind of basic things that should get students oriented to this space and be able to use it and actually interact from day one. So it might be something to guide students to, especially if they've never used this space before. Also, I designed this with the idea in mind that if you want to, you can modify it. So if you, the instructor, anyone thinks, I don't really like the wording here or something, and you need to modify it, you could. Okay, speaking of the idea of recording a session, as we said, we're recording this session. It should appear within the virtual classroom for the site it's recorded in. To get the recordings, what you're going to do is click the 3 horizontal lines near the top left of the page. It'll open up this little sub-menu, and one of the options is recordings. Any recordings you make should show up on this page right here. At first, it'll show processing, and then when it's done, it'll say done. Did I program this? I made the classroom tutorial, if that's what you're talking about. I made the videos and stuff, but the overall application, no, I just help support it. So the recordings will appear here, and generally the time to process the recording should take about as long as the recording is itself. So if I make today's recording, let's say it's in about 1 hour and 15 by the time we're done, well, it should take about 1 hour and 15 minutes to finish processing and become available. What I normally suggest telling students is it will be there within 24 hours at the absolute latest. It should be there a lot sooner, but that way, let's say there is a day where things are a little slower. Maybe there's a ton of people using the virtual classroom all at once and it's a little bit delayed in terms of processing. That cuts down on the emails you're getting, be like, why isn't it ready yet? These days, at least, it does still show up here and it would say it's processing, but it might, again, help to say set expectations a little bit lower. Should be there quicker, but if you say within 24 hours, it definitely should be there or something's gone wrong. And in terms of things going wrong, let's say the recording somehow didn't appear. It should. It's very, 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 very rare that something goes wrong with the recording. But if something did go wrong, or maybe one of your students is having trouble, or you're having trouble, the best way to get support with the virtual classroom is to go to the following link and submit a ticket. You wouldn't want to just email me directly because I might be in something like a workshop like this or away for a day. So you wouldn't get quick help. But if you go to this link, and it should be a clickable link in the chat now, if you go there, you can submit a ticket or a student could submit a ticket and the first available person will help them. There's a big group of us who would all jump on that ticket. First one would respond and try to help. So that is the best way to get help. And as a first piece of advice, using Chrome solves so many problems. Use Chrome if you can. Suggest everybody else use Chrome as well. So much of the tickets we see, so many of the problem solving we do involves, oh, are you using Chrome? Oh no, could you try switching to that? That solves 90 some odd % of the tickets. So try using Chrome, tell the students to use Chrome, check if they're using Chrome. It'll solve so much problems. It'll help a lot. Things like Safari, Internet Explorer, they might work one day and then break the next. Ooh, it can depend. At a busy time when there's tons of tickets coming in, it might take a little longer. Generally, we try to respond. I mean, it's not going to be days normally. It would hopefully be that same day. It can, again, kind of depend on just how many people are submitting tickets. If there's one day where, say, 400 people submitted tickets versus another day where 80 people submitted tickets, that might impact the speed of response as well. But we try to get back as quick as we can. And there's a number of us. We've got students we've been training as well to help with supporting these. So we're doing our best to make sure that we respond quickly. And they will actually, on, I believe it's the 14th of January, they're going to be introducing a chat bot into the virtual classroom. I'll show you where later, but that would also help problem solve. So you'll be able to actually type and chat with a chatbot that would at least be able to help with basic common issues. Again, I'll show you where that would be later, and it's not going to roll out for about another week and a bit. Okay, so recordings. We've got our recordings here. One of the things that does come up fairly often is that someone says the recording has disappeared. Recording from early in the term, I can't see anymore. Did it get deleted? What happened? Well, by default, it shows the past 30 days worth of recordings. So if you need to see older ones, see this filter by right here? Rather than recent recordings, change that to recordings in a range. Recordings in a range, and then I can see recordings for as far back as I want. I can even go back into 2020, which we finally escaped. I can see the older recordings. That is something I mentioned in the tutorial for students as well, so hopefully they know this. There's a number of things I can do with the recordings once I've identified them. If I click it, I could watch that recording. Logically enough, it would open in a new window, be able to watch it. And as I said, things like the chat would have been recorded and timestamped as well. If I click the 3 dots within a circle to the far right of the name, I can do a fair bit more. I could, again, watch it. As the instructor, or depending on your role in the course, if you're, say, the GA or TA in a course, you likely also will have the option to download. By default, students can't download. You can turn that on. I'll show you how in a little bit, but by default, students can't download unless you turn that feature on. Under recording settings, there's a couple of things. I can rename it. You can see it renames the part after the slash. The first part tells me where I recorded in it, which will make more sense in a second. But the second part lets me rename it. So I might say this is lecture 1 or lecture 1 part 1. I can make a name that makes sense. I can also allow public access. People in the site can access this recording no matter what. If it's there, they can click it and watch it. But if I want to, I can actually allow people outside of my site to watch this video. This could be people in a different section. Oh, this, I'll show you that in a sec. So I could allow people in a different section. I give them the link, which I'll show you in a sec, and allow them to watch it. But I can also let anyone outside of the university, someone who doesn't even have Blackboard access, watch this recording if I wanted to by giving public access. If I allow public access and save it, what I can then do is click those same 3 dots, get the link. I take this link, I copy it, I can email it, I can send it to anybody, and they'd be able to watch it, even if they're not associated with the university in any way. And just as a reminder, the way we got to this page was the 3 horizontal lines in your top left and choosing recordings after clicking into the virtual classroom page. Okay, finally, one problem with the virtual classroom is that unfortunately it doesn't actually caption our videos by default. It's not a feature of the virtual classroom. We don't get captions automatically added. So if you need the video captioned, you would actually have to use something else. You could use something like Stream to actually caption your videos for you. And in fact, if this is of importance to you, I have a workshop tomorrow at noon. Oops, and my page is frozen, so this is not helping. There we go. So I have a workshop tomorrow at noon that is 15 minutes long. I would show you how to download a recording from the virtual classroom, how to put it on stream, how to use stream to caption your video, edit those captions, and then if you want to, you could host the video from stream or actually get those captions back to the virtual classroom. So again, if you need these captions, you might want to go to that workshop, which you could sign up for at the link I just sent. Again, it's 15 minutes. Even if you can't make it, if you sign up, I'll send you the recording link after. Oh, you're not able to access the first page containing the virtual classroom. I'm not entirely sure what you mean. You would access the virtual classroom kind of like you did today, I think, to get to this session, or were you sent the guest link? I'm not actually sure. And yes, Blackboard and 2PC at the same time.
A guest link, sorry.
Ah, you went through the guest link, yes. So hopefully in most courses you're on, you will have the virtual classroom link there. You'd click that, and that will take you to the page we started on. I'm not sure in general for workshops if you're on a waitlist if you get recording, but in my particular case, to be honest, if I ever notice that one of my workshops has a waitlist, I just simply make it larger because I want everyone to be able to show up if they want. So for my case, you won't have to worry about that. You would definitely get a recording. The final thing to talk about in terms of the recording area is delete. There is the option to delete any recording you make, but be careful, you delete it, it's permanent. You might want to download a copy if you're unsure if you want to delete it or not, because you delete it, it's gone. Okay, so yeah, if your virtual classroom is not added, that's where you're going to use that trick I showed earlier, the plus symbol, tool link, and then Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. So normally it should be a default item. If you're using something like your sandbox to practice, it might not be on there. I would guess if you're having problems connecting, normally it would either be, I mean, using Chrome always helps, but it might be a cookie issue. And perhaps, a sandbox is a Blackboard site where you're meant to play with. Like, it's not everyone has one, but it's a site that is just kind of blank. It's a template. It's a place to actually go in and practice. Perfect. Thank you for that. And in terms of that cookie issue I was mentioning, there is a help page. I'm not sure, Laura, if there's any chance you in the background know the Collaborate help page I'm talking about in the wiki, and if there's any chance you could throw that in the chat for me. If not, I'll find it a little bit later on and share it with everybody. But so for those of you, again, virtual classroom, normally you'd click the virtual classroom and get to that main page. To get back to the sessions area where it actually go into a virtual classroom, I'm either going to click these three horizontal lines near top left, go to sessions, or simply click the menu item because both lead back to that default page, the opening page here. But yeah, Sandbox, just a general site some people should have that lets you play around with Blackboard. Okay. Now, the main space for the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra virtual classroom is right here. And normally there is two options. You have a course room or there's sessions that can be created. When you get into them, they should be the same. There's a couple differences that are set up when you create them, but each course has a specific course room for it. That course room is always open unless you choose to lock it. And to do that, you'd click the course room, and you can see there's an option to lock the course room, kind of like a regular classroom. If I don't want people going in there when I'm not in there, I can close it and lock it so no one else can go in. And then you can see it's locked. When I come back the next day, maybe I want to teach and now I want to let my students in there with me, I'd click it and unlock it. Often this is a personal preference. Some people do like locking a room when they're not in there. They don't want students going in if they're not in there. Others, myself included, I often leave it unlocked. If my students want to go in and hopefully talk about the coursework, well, that's great. I want them to have that space. Again, more of a personal preference though. Now, course room, again, always open unless I lock it, whereas a session is a room that's open for a specific time that we are setting. I can create a session. I can call it whatever I want. We'll talk about things like guest access a little bit later, but you can see I could specify a start date and start time, an end date and end time. I could make it a never-ending session if I really wanted to. I could have it repeat. May I want to repeat every Tuesday and Thursday. And I could have it every week. I could have it end after a set number of occurrences. To be honest, most people would probably be a little more comfortable with the idea of ending on a specific date. It's a little easier than counting out, well, how many sessions am I supposed to have? No, I want it to end on a certain date. And I can specify an early entry, up to 60 minutes early. Now, again, course room, session generally are the same functioning space when we get in them. They're the space we're all in right now. I normally recommend most people just use the course room, to be honest. There's a few advantages. Again, for one thing, it's always open unless I lock it, which means there's some advantages there because it's a common space. It's one space. I don't want to be using a course room and sessions at the same time because likely some people will go into one, some people will go in the other. So you want to make clear which space you're using at any given time. And again, I like the course room because maybe I'm going to teach in the virtual classroom, but then I'm also going to use it for office hours. And then maybe I'll have some one-on-one appointments with students every once in a while. Well, if I have one space, everyone knows go there every time, it makes it simpler. Especially maybe that student emails me saying, oh, I can't make office hours this week. Can I meet you at a different time? Well, if I use the course room, sure, we all just meet there. We know that. Whereas if instead I have to create a specific session to meet with that one student, and now I'm getting a bunch of emails from students being like, well, what's this extra session about? Did I miss something? Should I have been there? No. I find it easier. Course room for everything. Everyone knows go there no matter what. And one of the advantages also is I can go into the course room anytime I want. I unlock it, I go in, great. This session, I can only go in up to 60 minutes in advance. And one of the problems with that is if I load files to the course room today, they're still there tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now. And of course, I'll show you how to load files a little bit later on. But the course room, I can go in, load all my files today for the entire term. Or if I want to go back and reference something in office hours because someone's asking me about what did you cover in that first week, well, why don't we just pull it back up? I still have it there. Whereas a session, I have to go in each session and load the files. And remember, I can only get in up to 60 minutes early. This 60-minute timer applies to me and the students. So I can't go in and preload files early. It'd be each session, I'd go in, load the files a little bit early, but not say days in advance. And any files I had in a previous session aren't there. So that's a few of the advantages I think of the course room. Talk about a few more a little bit later on as well. Let's look at the settings you can have for either course room or a session. So if you click course room, that first page was the room details page, but there's also the sprockety symbol, the session settings page. And some of these things we don't have to worry about as much. The default attendee role, participant, that is the student access. That's the access you have today. You're all in here as participants, which is how students join. It's a lower level of permissions. You don't have quite the same options to do things as you will when you're the moderator in the room, but that's generally a good role. As I said, by default, students don't have the option to download. If you wanted to give them that option, you could turn that on here. You could also anonymize the chat in the recording. During the live session, the chat's not anonymous, but in the recording, it would be if you enabled this. Allowing people to have profile picture is more personal preference. And normally the 5 default settings here are this. By default, you have these 5 settings like this. And these are worth exploring. You probably want audio, video, and chat messages turned on. At least hopefully you do, because that's the way you're actually going to be able to communicate back and forth with the students. Generally, you're going to want those 3 on. The ability to draw on whiteboard and files, though, by default, you might want that off. Later on, I'm going to show you can control this in the virtual classroom itself. So that first activity I did today where I had you draw on the whiteboard, I could turn on the whiteboard live during the session. But maybe by default, I don't want that on. while I'm presenting, maybe I don't want people drawing on the files I'm presenting because that might get distracting. I can make it off by default and turn it on and off in the session live as I go. This is also more of a debatable one these days, whether you not want people to be able to join via this anonymous phone number. This would be someone dialing in and using their phone for audio, which could be a good thing because, hey, someone's having problems connecting on their computer, they can still call in and connect and use their phone for audio. The problem is it's an anonymous dial-in, meaning you have no way of telling who it is that actually is calling in. And no, the same with the whiteboard. You don't actually know who's drawing on the whiteboard at any given time. So I had no idea who was making those fantastic drawings. But this, I know some people do turn off this option because they don't want people to be able to anonymously dial in, especially because that number could then get shared out. People could come in and potentially do inappropriate things. You might have heard of the idea of Zoom bombing, or in our case, collab bombing, where you have, say, 15, 20 people coming in and doing inappropriate things. Well, that's why I know some people have turned off this dial-in option. And then you also have control over things like the chat. Right now, a lot of people have been using chat, which is great. And you have control of whether you want people to be able to privately chat in the background. And if so, whether you want to supervise that. That's, again, more of a personal preference. And of course, you can turn on profanity filter if you want. Again, kind of a personal preference on that. But assuming I was happy with these settings, I'd click save. And that's another advantage of the course room. I've changed these settings, I've saved them, I'm done. I don't have to worry about these settings again for the entire term. Whereas if I'm creating sessions, each session, I'm going to have to remember what settings I want. So I do think, again, some advantages. Okay, that being said, there is a couple situations where you might want to use a session. Especially in your case, many of you are going to be GAs, TAs in a course. So it might be that the instructor wants you and them to have sessions going at the same time. Maybe you're doing office hours in one room, they're going to do office hours in another room. Well, in that case, you might not have a choice. You could create multiple sessions in that case. You're in one, they're in another. Or you're leading two different sessions at once, teaching the students. That's where you might use two different sessions because basically they become two different rooms. Also, the other somewhat common scenario is that someone might want to have a more public event. Because one of the nice features of the virtual classroom is whether I'm using a course room or a session, I can allow guest access. By checking this box right here, normally I would, once I've created this, I'll call it example. Once I create the session, if I've enabled guest access, I get a guest link. This, from what I was told earlier, is what you were sent today. I can send this guest access so that if someone outside of the course needs to join, they can. I could invite a guest speaker from outside the course, outside the university, someone not associated with the university in any way. They don't need Blackboard access. I give them this link, they type their own name, and they enter. Of course, again, they type their own name, meaning it's anonymous. They might not type their name. So you have to be a little careful sharing this guest link. Again, I want to invite a guest speaker, easy, I'm not too worried. Hopefully they're gonna do things properly. But if I share this guest link out publicly, anyone with that guest link can join. Anyone can share that guest link with others and join. That's where the idea of collab bombing comes in again. Maybe this gets shared publicly, a lot of people join. Well, what some people are interested in doing is having a public event. Maybe you want students to present their work, and you want them to be able to invite their family, their friends. A nice idea. Well, some people have done it where they then use a guest link. They invite people. Well, especially if you're going to be sharing this publicly and widely, some people have put it on social media, some people have shared it on a website. In that particular case, you probably want to create a session specifically for that one large event where you're sharing the guest link, because the guest link for the course room never changes. If I share this guest link out today for a session, well, people can still use that guest link to join the next session as well. So I'd probably create a specific session for that public event. That way, if the guest link gets out, I get disrupted, it's not that big a deal because the next session, people won't be able to join via that link. And yes, you can technically boot people out of a room, but if they're clever, they'll get back in. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. You can boot them. If they're smart, they'll get back in pretty easily. So you can't really count on that. I'll show you other ways to control the room as well, but if I would just generally not encourage you to share the guest link out publicly unless it's for a specific event, in which case create a session for that. Okay. The only final last thing before we go into the space and actually start exploring it is that the virtual classroom has a limit on the number of people who can go into the room. By default, 250 people can go to a regular session, counting moderators, up to 250. If you don't have more than that, great, no problems. You just do a normal session or a normal course room for that matter. But if you need to have over 250, you have to enable what they call a large session. In that case, you have to use a session for it. The course room can't be used for over 250. And even in that case, the maximum number is up to 500. But if I need a session that's larger than 250, I'd click over to the session settings, I'd scroll down, and what I'm going to do is choose allow 250 plus people to join. This unfortunately disables a lot of features of the virtual classroom. Turns off, you can see people won't be able to actually use whiteboard, they won't be able to use video or audio. Even by default, the chat's turned off. When I go into the room, I can turn chat back on for the participants, but everything else is disabled. I can't use breakout rooms. So larger sessions, much more limited. And this is something you have to in advance. You can't just on the fly kind of decide to switch from a small session to a large session. Once people enter the room, the settings are chose. So you do need to know in advance a rough idea of the number of people. Ideally, you hopefully don't have to use a large session so you can use all the features. But if you do think you're going to have, say, 280 people, you're going to have to choose this in advance. Okay, let's go into the space. Let's start exploring it. For you, for your instructor, for the students, you're all generally going to join the same way. You click Course Room and then Join Course Room. My apologies, too much talking. Now, someone had a great question earlier, the idea of being able to join via 2 devices or be on 2 computers. Let's say you probably want to be able to practice this space at some point. Well, if you go back out to the virtual classroom area and click Join Course Room again, you're going to get an error message saying you're already in the room. However, there is a trick. Remember that guest link? If I take that guest link, what I can do is add it in a new tab and actually add myself a second time. Maybe I want to add a fake student so I can practice and really see things from a more authentic perspective. I could definitely do that. Or even better, maybe you want to invite one of the other people in this session. You both want to practice. You each be each other's students. Or maybe someone you haven't had a chance to talk to in a while. Well, this gives you a chance to talk and they get to be your guinea pig. But this lets you join the room multiple times. And if you bear with me for a second, I'm actually going to add a couple fake students just to make this a little more authentic when I demonstrate. And I'm going to take a moment to mute them just to avoid an echo or having to listen to myself. So we get a flood of my cute kitten pictures as fake students. So yeah, that would let you practice, and I'm going to zoom in a bit on the space we're in so that you can hopefully see things a little bit clearer. Okay, so this is a space. Again, whether it's a session or a course room, it would look the same. The only difference is if I was doing a large session, whereas over 250. When I log in as a moderator, I have the option to start the recording if I wanted to. Of course, if I'm not ready to start recording, I could just click the X to get rid of that message, because I probably don't want that up the whole time. And then later on, when I am ready to start recording, I'd click the 3 horizontal lines near the top left of the screen, open the session menu, and there's start recording right at the top. When I click that, I get a pop-up message for me and everyone else warning us that the session is being recorded now. Of course, 5 minutes from now, maybe I forget. Have I actually turned on the recording? Oh no. Did I? How do I know? Well, if I take a quick look, Near the top left of the screen, there's a little camera icon with a red dot. And it even tells me the recording is in progress if I hover over it. So that's your little reminder, your confidence check to make sure. And if I want to stop the recording at any point, click the same 3 horizontal lines and stop recording. It now appears. If you have a session and you take a break in the middle, maybe 5 minutes, everyone go away, do say lunch or something, and then you come back and start the recording again, that didn't pause the recording, it made 2 separate recordings. So you'd maybe want to go back in and use that renaming we showed earlier to go in and say, okay, well, this is part 1, this is part 2. The rest of the parts in this menu up here aren't really important for us. And if someone needed to, they could report an issue. This would be more for sending to Blackboard. If someone was submitting a ticket and really felt ambitious, if they were having problems in the session, they could copy all of this auto-generated report, copy this huge bulk of text, paste that into the ticket they're submitting. It would give us a lot of information. Not everyone's gonna think to do that. I do put that into the tutorial. Some might do it, but some might not. The rest of this in that menu, I mean, I'm going to go through the Collaborate in more detail than this will. There's the help pages. And if you wanted to, you could leave the session via this link right here. You can also just X the session out. But likely the most important thing, though, once you get in the space is making sure your audio and video work. And the first thing for that is making sure we're using Chrome. Again, can't emphasize enough. Use Chrome when you can. Because one thing I should mention is, again, we can add ourselves multiple times, but it's worth noting the virtual classroom is mobile friendly as well. If I wanted to, I could log into Collaborate on my phone. If I'm using an Android device, I can log in on the Blackboard app or using a browser, Chrome. If I'm using an iPhone, I'd have to use I'd actually have to use the app. iPhones, you have to use the app. An iPad is the weird exception. You can use either the app or you have to use Safari. Not sure why. That's the one weird exception. Everything else, again, use Chrome. Desktop, laptop, use Chrome. Tablet. But that will, again, solve problems. It is nice that it's mobile friendly. I usually wouldn't recommend trying to run a session from your phone, but if you're, say, running late, someone asks to meet with you on the fly, it can work on audio and video with your phone, and it works pretty well. Okay, but again, likely the first thing that you need to do, audio and video, is it working? When you logged in today, it probably prompted you to set up your audio and video. Next time you log in, it probably won't. It should remember the defaults you chose today. But let's say you run into trouble. First, gonna make sure you're using Chrome. But assuming I am, what I'm gonna do is click the purple icon near the bottom right to open up our Collaborate panel. And in my case, I'm gonna click into the gear symbol here, the My Settings part, and click the Set Up Your Camera and Microphone. If you run into trouble, that's a good place to start. Set up your camera and microphone. It'll let you pick which microphone you want to use if you have more than one. It's very encouraging, saying you sound great, and shows a purple bar rising and falling as you talk. Yes, it's working, or it'll take you to help files. Same with video, it'll let you pick which one you want to use if you had more than one, and yes, it's working. Great. That didn't turn it on, but it did make sure it's working. When I'm ready to turn on the webcam, I'll click the camera icon near the bottom middle. I get to preview first, make sure, okay, am I happy with this? Sure. And then when I'm ready to turn on the microphone, same thing, click share audio, and great. I'm now talking, but maybe I'm in the room with one person and they say they can't hear me. Well, is it me or is it them? How do I know? There's a nice quick visual check. If you look at my microphone in the bottom middle here, you should see the white bar rising and falling as I talk. If I see that, I'm transmitting audio. Someone says they can't hear me, it's something on their end. Right away, I can do a quick visual check and know. If I don't see it rising and falling, it's something with me. Am I using Chrome? Set up camera, microphone, and go from there. I would generally encourage you to think of the microphone as a toggle switch, kind of like an old school walkie-talkie where you turn it on when you're ready to talk, off when not. That avoids things like any kind of echo. It would avoid you forgetting your mic is on and then walking away, and now everyone's hearing your dog barking or you talking with someone in the background. I'd encourage students to think of it as a toggle switch as well. So off when you're not ready to talk. And I kind of lost my thought for a second there. Yeah, using it as a toggle switch is definitely best. There is a few other buttons along the bottom here we can look at as well. There's the raise hand feature. So it might be you want to run a session just like a normal classroom where, like me, maybe you like people being able to put in questions in the chat anytime they want. Again, please, any questions, put it in chat. Love to make sure everyone's on the same page. But maybe if someone's going to turn on their mic, you'd prefer them to raise their hand. Well, this is my fake students raising their hands. You see, I get a notification saying someone has a question. So maybe I'm going to finish my thought and then go, okay, what's your question? And student would ask their question. And when they're done, they'll probably lower their hand. If not, I'll lower it for them. And then you can see it actually puts people in order. I had 2 students who raised their hand. Now student 2, what's your question? Which I can lower. The 4th button we're going to look at briefly, not all of the features, but what there is the option to set yourself as away. So if I need to step away, say during office hours for 5 minutes, I would set myself as away, and that would automatically turn off my microphone and webcam in case I forgot. So that way people aren't hearing my dog barking if I had one. When I click back, it's going to turn it back on. But again, I encourage you to think of them as toggle switches, and I'm going to disable them both in this room for now. You could also leave the session here, and the rest of this feedback we're going to look at a little bit later. Now, I mentioned the idea of turning off your microphone to avoid any kind of echo. Some students and you might be using just the built-in microphone on your laptop, and then the built-in speakers on your laptop. Generally, that should work well. Maybe if there's a lag in your internet, it could cause a bit of an echo or a loop. If you ever find you or students having problems where the speaker's picking up or the microphone's picking up the noise coming from speakers, starts to loop and make a horrible noise, one of the easiest, most economical solutions for that is a cheap pair of dollar store headphones. I've literally used dollar store headphones, plug those into your laptop so sound comes out those and you can still use the inbuilt microphone that way. Very economical way of solving that problem. Because if you have something like a headset, you might love that. I like it. It's a great approach for me, but not everyone's going to want to have to spend the money on that. Okay, let's go back to this My Settings area for a while. There was this set up your camera and microphone. I can also control the speaker volume, so how loud things are. I could do that from my computer, or I could do it here. You'd likely never do what I'm about to do, which is mute the speaker volume. This would mean I wouldn't hear anything in this room. I'm simply doing this because I know I'll turn on one of my fake student microphones later. You'd likely never do that. Notification settings, this can be important for some people, especially if you get annoyed by the dinging noises that are occurring in this session. If you're getting all these pop-ups that you don't want to see, you have control of that here. Do you want a dinging noise? Do you want a pop-up? It's up to you for various things that happen. For someone like me, I've actually enabled more than dinging noises and pop-ups. So again, I use this for office hours. And sometimes I might not have a student in the room, so I'm off doing something else, like checking my email, doing other work. Well, I want to get that ding. I want to get that pop-up coming up and letting me know someone's joined the room so I know to come over and help them. But again, personal preference. I'd go through this yourself and see which ones you want dinging noises or not. Session settings is important and hopefully a bit familiar looking. Remember those participant permissions? The same for here. As I said, you can control them live during the session. So earlier, if I'd wanted you to be able to draw on the whiteboard and actually be able to interact on that one activity, I could check that, and now everyone would have the option in this particular room to draw on the whiteboard or on files. And then when we're done that activity, if I want them to stop, I'd simply disable it. One thing worth noting, by the way, is that if you're looking for this session settings and these buttons in the room you're in today, you won't see them. Today you're here as participants. Moderators are the ones who sees this, the same as with the recording option. You wouldn't have had the recording option if you went to look for it. We also talked about the idea of collab bombing. Maybe I've had a public event, I've shared the guest link, I have 20 people in the room now doing horrible, inappropriate things. This is where I shut them down. Turn off their ability to do anything. 20 people in the room who want to do inappropriate things, but they can't even post a chat message. Hopefully that'll never happen to you, but if it does, this is how you could control it. Let's go to the far left button now, the chat, the bubble. Again, as a moderator, I actually have more options than you do. You would see the everyone chat, which is for everyone, but as a moderator, you end up having a moderator chat as well. This could be maybe, again, you have a guest speaker and you want to coordinate. Maybe you're coordinating with other GAs and TAs or with another instructor or something like that. This would be a private space for just the moderators to talk. Maybe it's, oh, I see so-and-so is having trouble. Can you go help them? Oh, I need you to speed up on this section. We're running out of time. This is where you coordinate. It's only moderators who see this, and it is not recorded. The everyone chat is recorded, as I said, and it's for everyone, logically enough. And there's a lot of nice features in here. I can say hi. I can use bold. I can italicize. I can underline. I mean, I can do all three if I really want to. One feature a lot of people don't realize these days is they've added an at feature. So I can at a specific person. Maybe if someone in the chat was asking me a specific question and I didn't see it right away and then I want to type a response later on, I could at that student so it would highlight who I'm messaging. There's a wealth of emojis, way more than I would ever possibly use, but there is some really nice features. You can select the skin tone, which I think is really good. I could search through the emojis if I'm looking for a specific one. I can go along the top, and again, there's just way more than I would ever use, but still, it's a nice feature. As I said before, the chat gets recorded and timestamped when you're recording. Let's go over to the next panel, the attendees panel, which has a lot of good information. Firstly, it lists who's in the room, which is nice. I can see everyone who's in the room. I can see their role, whether it's a moderator or a participant. I've got this weird bucket symbol beside their name. You can see it looks like a bucket with a bunch of lines in it, which talks about their experience. Loosely speaking, this translates roughly to your connection. It's not a perfect translation. They add other factors, which kind of messes it up a bit, to be honest. But you can loosely think this is your network connection. What I usually tell people is if it tells me my experience is excellent, I take that with a grain of salt. If it tells me my experience is poor or even okay, I think it's fair. Sorry, I can't remember the exact lingo. But if it tells me something like that I believe, it probably means I have a bad connection. So if you see a student who's getting kicked out repeatedly from the session, keeps having to join, or saying, oh, I can't really hear you, it's cutting out a lot, or there's a huge delay, go into here and check. If it says their experience is poor, probably means they have a bad connection. If you're going to be using a virtual classroom and your connection's a little weaker, there's a few things you can do. Ideally, connect via Ethernet. If you can connect via Ethernet directly from your computer to your modem, you're going to get the best, most stable connection you can. I actually don't even have that strong of internet, but I get a better connection than most people I know simply because I use Ethernet. I mean, right now I'm in what, 4 virtual classrooms at once, technically? And yet, hopefully, the process has been pretty smooth for you. Hopefully, what I'm sharing is still smooth. It's because I'm on Ethernet. If you can connect via Ethernet, it'll work better. Not always practical for everyone, at which point, if you're going to be using Wi-Fi, get ideally as close to the modem as possible. Also, most of us are going to be working from home. Most of us are probably not home alone. Maybe we have roommates, maybe we have spouse, maybe we have kids. Well, in that case, maybe you need to help try and coordinate with the people in the space you're in. Look, I have to run a session at this time where I'm going to be doing intensive things. I need the bandwidth to be good. Can you not be streaming Netflix at the same time? Can you not be watching a YouTube video while I'm trying to teach this lecture? Things like that. Also, silly things you can do. If you're like me, don't have 20 tabs open while you run a session. If your connection is bad, closing those tabs will help save bandwidth. Also closing extra programs on your computer. It might not be a connection issue. It might be your computer is running out of processing power. Shutting down unneeded programs will help. Again, hopefully this won't actually impact most of you. Hopefully your connection will just be great. You won't have to worry. But if you or someone you're working with has a bad connection, those tricks will help. Okay, what else can I do in this attendees panel? Well, if I click the 3 dots to the far right of someone's name, there's a few things I can do. For one thing, I can make someone a moderator or a so-called presenter. Up until now, I've kind of glossed over the third role. I've been talking about participant, the student level, moderator, the instructor level. There is an intermediate role. Maybe I want students to do a presentation. I probably don't want to make them a moderator. We'll see in a moment, a moderator could kick someone from a session. They could mute someone. I probably don't want students being given that power. So I'd probably make them a presenter. A presenter has the ability to share files, to share their screen, but not kick people. So it's a nice intermediate role. Now that being said, if I accidentally promoted a student to moderator, as the original moderator, I have the ability to demote them back down. I could also send a private chat message. If I want to, I can send a private chat message just to that student. Of course, I have to be a little careful. I'm using a lot of private chats that I don't get confused who I'm talking to at any given time or what chat I'm in at any given time. Nice thing is, if someone posts a message in one of the other chat, in my case, I get a pop-up because of the notification settings I chose, but I also see the red dot at the top of the chat to let me know there's something said somewhere else. To get out of the chat, I'd click the arrow beside the name of that particular chat channel, and I can see all my chats, go in there and see what was said. So just double check you're posting things in the right space if you're going to be going back and forth between them. You don't want to post someone in everything channel or the everyone channel that was meant for moderators only. Okay, a couple other things. I could kick someone from a session that was asked earlier, but as I alluded to earlier, if I remove someone from a session, it's not necessarily a permanent ban. I kick someone from the session. They're going to pop up saying you've been removed. If they refresh the page, it won't let them back in. If they're smart though, they can just shut things down and then rejoin. It's not a permanent ban. So be aware of that. I can make someone a captioner. Again, unfortunately, the virtual classroom doesn't have automatic captions in here as well. And generally, this is not really a feature that's used because this would mean you have a very set script and someone to type it out. So generally, this isn't used, but could be a feature if someone had the use case. Okay, earlier we talked about the idea, I've turned on my mic, someone said they couldn't hear me. How do I know their problem is? Oh, I look at the audio levels rising and falling. What if my student turns on their mic? Well, in the participant panel, the attendees panel, I should see a microphone symbol beside their name when they turn it on. If I don't see a microphone symbol, it means they haven't even turned on their mic. The computer's not even recognizing it. And in that case, if a student ever says something like, my microphone symbol is grayed out, there's likely one of two explanations. One, they might have blocked their microphone. More about that in a sec. Or it might be they don't actually have a microphone. I've had some students who have a desktop computer and assume there's a microphone, and no, there isn't. So it's worth checking. If they say that, did you block it? Oh, in that case, do you have a microphone? But I should see the microphone symbol beside their name when they turn it on. And then not only that, I should see the same kind of audio level rising and falling as they talk. If I don't see that, oh, you're not transmitting. Your microphone is recognized but not transmitting. Or, oh, yeah, it is. I'm not hearing them. It's actually on my end, the problem. Am I using Chrome? Did I go to my setup audio and camera? And I hate to say it, it's cliche, but sometimes if I'm having huge audio problems after I was working in the session, I would normally just recommend close the session and reopen it. It should only hopefully take like 15, 20 seconds to close it and reopen it immediately. And hopefully you never have to do it. But it's one of those things that's kind of cliche for a reason. Sometimes, for whatever reason, that can help. So shutting it down, opening it up. Hopefully you don't ever have to do it, but it's a nice thing to keep in your back pocket. Now, this is a student who maybe forgot my advice about using it as a toggle switch. They've walked away. I'm hearing them talking with other people and it's disrupting the session. I now click those same 3 dots and I can mute them. Of course, if I had, say, 30 people in the room at once, I don't have to go through and mute everyone one at a time and find them. So what I can do is click the three dots at the top right, and I have the option to mute all. So I mute everyone. I also have the option to detach panel. It doesn't actually detach it. It just kind of moves it to the side here. But it is nice because then I can have a list of the attendees. I can have the chat open. I could have whatever I'm sharing. So it's a nice way to be able to run the session. In my case, I'm going to merge it back in because I need more real estate. Okay, I had mentioned the idea that someone might block their microphone. When you join today, you're probably asked to either allow or block your microphone and camera. Some of us, without thinking, are going to click block. Oh no, now what? As long as you're using Chrome, there's an easy fix. Now this part's hard to see, I gotta say. It's hard to see, but if you look near the top left of the screen I've been sharing this whole time, you should see probably right around here, kind of looks like a magnifying glass over a piece of paper. If you click that, that controls the zoom for you in particular. So you can zoom in on anything you want to. It doesn't affect anyone else. Because in this case, what we're interested in is the little lock symbol to the left of our address bar. And it's possible some people won't know what that means when you say that. So you'd say, well, see where it says ca.bbcollab.com? To the left of that, there should be a tiny little lock symbol near the top of the screen. Click that, and what that'll do is allow you to override the block you might have put on your camera and microphone. A neat trick, by the way, that works for other sites as well if you ever need this. So this allows you to quickly fix the I've accidentally blocked the camera and microphone. Great. Finally, the last thing in the attendees panel was that fourth button. We didn't fully look at that. And I have seen a few of you exploring it already. If I go into that fourth button, there is feedback. This is a way of reproducing some of the informal, non-verbal cues we might have got from students. When I'm teaching a class, I can look around and see some confused faces. Okay, pretty clear what that means. In the online realm, that might be a little harder, especially because even if I'm not sharing anything and I just have cameras up, I can only see up to 4 cameras on screen at a time. It'll prioritize whoever's talking or talked recently, but I only see up to 4 at a time, so I'm not going to likely know my students are confused. This is a way they could give me some informal feedback. Maybe they indicate they're confused. And as the instructor, I'd see who's confused and get a tally at the top saying how many people are confused. And I'm sure there's, oh, no one's doing it yet. Wow. But it's also nice because it does run down over time. There's not going to be a bunch of people who say they're confused at the beginning of the lecture and stay that way the whole time. After about 20, 30 seconds, it's going to run down and disappear. Also, you could get quick informal feedback. You could get people to say things like, oh, you need to go faster, or even simply ask a quick question of, okay, I think this was clear. Everyone agree? Are we ready to move on? And I'd be able to get a quick agree or disagree. And that would all display in here. The final area where a lot of the power of the virtual classroom is in the share content area, the final of our buttons. I can pull up a whiteboard, kind of like I was using earlier. Technically, that was a slide, but there's the whiteboard, which I could type on. I could use the arrow to grab anything I use and move it around, resize it, rotate it if I really want to. The pointer would show me what it is I'm pointing at. Everyone would see that on their particular screen. This right here is the important word, people. I can draw. It even tries to smooth out the lines for me, which I appreciate because I'm a pretty messy writer. If I'm going to be doing a lot of drawing, I probably am better off trying to use something like a tablet or an iPad. I can change the color. I can get some very basic shapes. And as the moderator, I have the option to erase the entire board. As you saw earlier, if you use the arrow, click on it, click delete, you can delete specific things. Moderator has the option to delete the board. But you have to be careful. That's a permanent delete. The whiteboard's not a permanent feature. I delete it or I go to something else, come back, it is gone. So if you've drawn something out, if you've worked out some nice example problem, take a screenshot if you want to have a record of it. I mean, of course, if I'm recording the session, that also would get recorded. But you delete it, it's gone. And anytime I want to stop doing something in the virtual classroom, what I should have is this circle with a square in it. This is our stop button. That stops sharing the whiteboard. I'm going to skip the share camera for a second. Share camera might seem a little redundant because I've got the camera icon down here. Why would I need this camera? Well, this would, if I was sharing my whiteboard and I click share camera, that would force the camera to become the main thing on the screen. And remember, that's what would get recorded in the recording. So maybe I was presenting something, but now I need to do a physical demonstration. I have to show the right-hand rule for something. Well, I can share my camera and make sure that's recorded. Or if I had more than one camera, when I click share camera, it'd let me pick which one. And I could actually have this camera and this camera open at the same time. In some cases, some instructors have used this for wanting to do a physical demonstration and showing it from two different angles. Students could click back and forth between two angles. Sorry, 1 second. My apologies, probably should have muted my mic when I drink, but just too much talking. Some people have also used this to show artifacts from two angles. So it is something you could possibly be interested in. Share files. This is potentially useful as well. We alluded to this much earlier in the presentation. I can load a file. This would allow me to pull in a PowerPoint, PDF, or image file. Sorry, too much talking, not COVID. I could pull in a PowerPoint, PDF, or image file. The problem is it would take those and convert them into an image file. So what does that mean? If I had a PowerPoint that had a lot of animations built in or hyperlinks, those would all be broken. It would take it and make it image files instead. I could add any file I want, and I would find it, bring it in. And again, if I'm using a course room, I could load them today. They're still there tomorrow, still there a week from now. If I want to then present them, I would click it. If you're like me and trying to double click, it won't work. You have to make sure it's clicked, highlighted, then click share now. If it's a bunch of slides, I get to preview them first, then click on the slide I want to start on, and then I can navigate that with the arrows along the bottom here. That way I could have the chat open at the same time, and I can use those same annotation tools. So maybe I want everyone to realize, well, this right here is the important image. Of course, as I said before, these are not permanent annotations. I go to the next slide, and then back, it's unfortunately gone. But would have been recorded, of course. Okay, anytime I want to stop, circle with square. Of course, you might have PowerPoints that have animations that are important, or you might want to share something that's not a PowerPoint, PDF, or image file. There's another way to do that. I mean, this share files approach can be nice because it's lower bandwidth. And again, I can have things like the chat open at the same time very easily. But you might want to share something like some software you want to demonstrate. You might want to show the course website. You might want to, again, show even something like an Excel file. Well, in that case, you're likely going to use the share application /screen. When I click into that, I can actually pick a screen to share. If you have more than one, you get to pick which one. And the first time you do this, it's going to look weird. I have to show you just because everyone worries the first time they did this, because what you get is a horrible looking picture in picture in picture. This is a good sign. As much as it doesn't seem like it, this is a good sign, because what's happening is I'm sharing the screen, which shows me sharing the screen, which shows me sharing this, basically a bunch of mirrors reflecting off each other. So this is a good sign, and whatever I pull up, that's what they would see. That's what I've been doing this whole time. I've been sharing my screen. That's why when I was on the website, you saw the website. When I was in the virtual classroom, you saw the virtual classroom. Whatever I pull up on the screen, that's what you see. Circle with square and stop. Worth exploring this in a little more detail is I can choose to share a screen or a specific application. Maybe I don't want them seeing everything. I just want them seeing a specific application, or maybe a specific tab in Chrome. And this is a nice example of do what I say, not what I do. Don't have a ton of tabs open if you have a bad connection, but you could specifically choose a tab to share. And within the Chrome tab or entire screen, I have this tiny little box here to share audio. This would be my system audio. If I wanted to, I could share system audio. So maybe I have an audio file I just want to play from my computer. Great, I could do that. Now, this is where you have to be a little careful. Some people want to use this to share video, which can technically work. I could use this, share audio, then I start playing a video and it would show the video and the audio. The problem is this is bandwidth intensive. If my connection is weak or the student's connection is weak, likely the streaming is going to suffer. It might lag and they might miss parts. So generally, if you're wanting to share a video, especially if it's something you can share another way, I'd encourage that. Like if it's a YouTube video, you're better off putting the link to that in the chat. As we saw before, I put a link in the chat, it becomes clickable. I'd recommend having a Word file with all the links you need, copy and paste them in the chat. Students can go watch it on their own. Let's take a 5-minute break. Everyone go watch this YouTube video. They choose the quality they want that way, that best suits their needs, and they'd have the link later in case they need to use it. That is generally the best approach. It's less bandwidth intensive. And also, if it's a YouTube video, you can always share it with them before the live session, get them to watch it then, rather than taking up time during a live session. And of course, there might be cases where you have a video only on your computer, or you need to be able to pause it and talk to them throughout it. Well, in that case, you might need to use the share application screen and share audio to do that. But if you can just share the link, I'd encourage that. The virtual classroom also has a basic polling feature. I always say, don't get too excited though. I can do polling. And in fact, I can even get to track a record of the polls I did, which is nice. However, when I click into polling, I can do multiple choice or yes, no, but let's take a look. Multiple choice poll, I have to obviously put the question and the answers, but I can't do this in advance. If I want to track these questions, the best approach would be to have a Word file where I'm copying the question and the answers into it. If I don't need to track the record, I could simply have a slide that has that question and answers on it. Because when I start the poll, even without the options, it'll show up. And again, now I have a 5th button along the bottom that is for opening and closing the polls. Students would have that same button. And in fact, let's bring in one of the student perspectives, the one I muted, so you can see what that looks like too. They were muted, not a permanent mute, but they would see the poll. If I had a slide being displayed, they'd be able to close and open the poll, read the question, then answer. They don't see how everyone else has answered until I make that available by showing the responses. I want them to start responding again. I'd hide the responses. I could clear the responses, but as soon as I click show, they get to see what everyone's picked or what the overall response is. As the moderator, I could go in the attendees panel and see who's responded and how. But I can stop this poll anytime I want. And I was alluding to the fact that you can track the poll results. Well, you can. If I go back out to the virtual classroom area, session's over, and I did it in the course room, let's say, I would click the 3 dots to the far right, and what I do have is the option to view reports. There's 2 reports I can view, one being that of any polls I did, which sounds great. But let's take a quick look at one of the polls I did in a recent similar workshop. I get a CSV file, which I can open in Excel. And let's look at the poll results. Because normally I would get who answered and how they answered and even the time they answered. But this was an example of me doing the exact same type of question I just did. You can see the guest answered, but since I didn't specify the question or the answer, there's nothing to record. They answered blank. They answered, but they answered blank. This particular student answered a blank. This student never actually answered. So if I want to track the actual answers, I should probably specify the question and answers in there. And also worth noting, if you look at the Excel file, this isn't something that could immediately be sent to the Grade Center. If you needed to use this and bring this into the Blackboard Grade Center, you'd actually have to manually do that. So normally I recommend thinking of this as more of a formative, just a thing to get some engagement going. Don't save. I can also get an attendance report. This gives me details of who was in the room, how long they joined. Hopefully yours is a more diverse group than this. I could export it to CSV. So again, I could open this in Excel. But again, polls likely more of a formative thing, or I'm gonna have to actually copy and paste the question and answers in from Word. Of course, the yes/no polls may be a little easier to use since I only have the yes/no. I might even just do a similar thing to what I did with agree, disagree, where it's, okay, has everyone learned this? Give me a quick yes or no. The final feature of the virtual classroom is the breakout groups. And there's quite a few things you can do in there. This is the idea of, let's say you want to do a think, pair, share activity where you send students off into a small group to work together, then come back to the main room and share what they've learned. Well, I can do that. And if you bear with me for a second, I'm going to actually add a couple more fake students because it'll be easier to demonstrate this part. So bear with me just one moment. I like using the trick of the guest link to be able to add more fake students. Okay, because breakout rooms, well, you might want to do something like a random assignment. I just want to take the class and split them into smaller rooms to work together. Great. I click breakout groups. In this case, I want to do a random assignment. I could include moderators in that assignment, but I probably wouldn't want to because I want to make sure the students are evenly split, not the moderators. I could get to pick the number of groups. In my case, I only have the option of 2 because I have 4 students in here. They want you to have at least 2 students per group so that you can actually have engagement. So if I had 10 students, I could go up to 5 groups or as little as 2. Talk about this option a little bit later, but you can see it automatically created the groups for me. If I was unhappy thinking, oh, student 2 and 3 shouldn't be working together, they're trouble together, I could shuffle it. Oh, of course, this shuffle didn't actually change that. Wow. There we go. And I could do things like rename the group if I really wanted to. When I'm ready, I click start, and all of my students will be randomly split into even groups. Within the breakout groups, they're given the same permissions as a presenter. So they'd be able to share files, they'd be able to share screens if they wanted to. Also worth noting, what happens in the breakout rooms is not recorded. I'm not seeing what's going on in these breakout rooms either unless I'm in there. To get into a breakout room, I'd go to the attendees panel. You can see I now get to see all the different groups. And beside a group name, I'm going to see a green arrow pointing at what kind of looks like a door. That's kind of what it is. It lets me enter the breakout room. Depending on their notification settings, they might get a pop-up saying, I'm coming in the room. And now I'd be able to see and hear everything going on in that breakout room. Each breakout room has its own private chat area as well, where only that breakout group sees what's going on. But remember, the students always have the option. In fact, let's switch to one of the students' views for a second. The student could always go back out to the everyone chat. So you might want to tell them in advance that, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you updates in the everyone chat where I say you have 5 minutes left, 2 minutes left. Or if you're having trouble and need my help, go to the everyone chat and let me know. Yes, I will definitely show how you can have kind of private office hours in just a moment using breakout groups. I'm going to show one thing first. Now, which one is my student user? I believe it's this one. Okay, so to end the breakout rooms, as always, circle with square to end it. I can either do that from the attendees panel here or go back out to the share content and the breakout rooms. Click that. That would bring everyone back to the main room. They've worked in their breakout rooms. Now they come back to the main room. That was if I wanted a random assignment. Of course, you might want to have the same groups each week. Or you might want students to be able to even pick their own topic. Something like a seminar course where there's a couple topics you can go in and talk about, students pick. Well, both of those can be accomplished in a similar way. What you do, click breakout groups, and in this case, we want a custom assignment. And I'm going to allow attendees to switch groups. I'll explain why in a sec. Because maybe, again, I'm going to have the same groups each week. And I've said, okay, I've given out the groups in advance. You know you're part of group 1. You know you're part of group 2. Great. I can add more groups if I need to by clicking the plus symbol. If I create too many, I can always delete one. I could rename them, as I said. And now, if it was a small class, if I felt ambitious, I could move the students individually, click their names, drag them to the groups. Even if I have, I don't know, 15, 20 students, that's probably more trouble than I want to take. I don't want to be taking a couple minutes and losing the class while I move them into the rooms myself. Instead, what I'll do is start the breakout groups. And since I chose that option to allow themselves to move, I would now get the students to move themselves. I would tell them, go to the attendees panel. See where it looks like 2 people and has the number 5? Click that. Scroll down, you should see all of the groups listed, including your group. Remember, you know what group you're in. click the green arrow pointing at the box beside your group name and go in there. First time you do this, there might be a couple of students who struggle. Hopefully not. I mean, instructions should be pretty clear, but by the second time, it should be smooth. So you can have the same groups each week this way. Or again, let them pick their own topics if it was, say, a list of topics. As always, circle with the square stop. And another use case for the breakout rooms would be if you wanted to have private office hours, as was asked in the chat. Because, again, I have office hours in the virtual classroom, and hopefully you're still hearing me. My screen seems to have frozen.
We can hear you.
Ah, perfect. Well, can you still see my screen, even though it's frozen? Because this is going to get a lot less interesting of a demonstration when I
Yes.
can't actually click the screen. Okay. Well, in a moment, I'll try to quit a couple of my fake students so that hopefully my screen will go back to normal. Because what we're going to do is create a waiting area for our students and also a private place we can meet with students if they want using breakout groups. Assuming I can get my computer back up and running. My apologies for this. I mean, if I need to, I'll try to describe. As long as you can still hear me, I can always describe. Oh, there we go. Okay. Wow. So I'm going to quit out a few of these students because my computer is struggling all of a sudden. Okay. So what we do to make this work is we'd use breakout groups. Assuming there's my moderator self is here. Okay, so what I usually recommend is I'd create some kind of file in advance, maybe some simple PowerPoint slide. Your exact wording might be different. I use something like this. Again, the main idea is I'm just welcoming the office hours, and I get them to say hi in the chat. The reason for that is if I'm meeting with one student and 2 or 3 students all join at the same time, well, I'm likely not going to see who joined first, or I might not remember. So how do I know who to meet with next? Well, if they say hi in the chat, it puts them in order for me. So your messaging may differ, but this is simply a PowerPoint slide I made. I imported, brought in one day, still there weeks later. I will leave this open. And then what I do is go back out to the breakout groups. I'll create a breakout group. And in my case, I want a custom assignment. I definitely do not want people to be able to switch groups. And I could create more than one breakout group if I really wanted to. Maybe I want to have one office hours area for me, one for someone else. So I could have 2 groups, one for myself, one for someone else. And what I do is I'd move myself into one. And the student who wants to meet with me, in this case, student 3, bring them into group 1 with me and click start. Now we have a private place we're meeting. No one else is able to see or hear what's going on. The other students who join the room will see the waiting area. And so if I bring in this other student, this is what they see. Whereas me and the other student are meeting privately. We can share a screen, we can share files, we can talk, we can work on anything they want. And then when I'm done meeting with this student, I'd go back out to breakout groups. And presumably a student would probably leave when we're done, but if not, I would drag them back to the main room. And if student 5 wanted to meet with me privately as well, I'd move them into group 1, click update, and now I've swapped out who I'm talking with. There is technically one other thing I can show you with the virtual classrooms. Like everything with this space, we've pretty much explored exhaustively, but it's worth noting that you can actually, and I'll close out some of those fake students, within the groups feature of Blackboard. You have that users in groups, and in the groups area, you can create groups, maybe for a group project or something else. Well, I can do group sets, so maybe I want a bunch of groups created randomly for some group project where students are going to be assigned. One of the tools that you can make available is the virtual classroom. So if I want to, within a group, I could give that group a specific virtual classroom for them only. I can even allow them to record. So it might be I want to give students a space where they could meet to coordinate and plan a group project. I wouldn't necessarily force them to be in there. A lot of them probably would rather use something like Facebook or Teams or something like that. But it would be an option. Here's a space you can meet. If you really want, you can even record. So this is another way the virtual classroom can be used. It's a group specifically just for that group. The instructor or GATA should be able to go in and see them, but only if you know when they're meeting. And otherwise, that is a whirlwind introduction to everything to do with the virtual classroom. Happy to stick around and answer any questions people might have. I will likely turn off the recording in a moment just to avoid too much dead time, but I'll leave it on in case you have questions. No problem. Thanks for coming out. Oh, one thing, sorry. Thank you, Laura. I forgot. They would like me to ask if you could give feedback. I would appreciate feedback. I'm always looking for ways to improve these sessions. So I will post the link to that form in the chat. So please, if you have a moment, fill that out just so I can see what to do better next time. But also still happy to stick around and answer any questions or concerns you have. Thanks, you too. I think I will stop the recording, but I will still stick around to answer questions. But again, just to avoid dead air at the end.